Program Director, Mrs. Vanitha Gordhan, Anisha, and Priyesha, as well as the whole extended Gordhan family, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to express my profound gratitude to Mrs. Vanitha Gordhan and the Gordhan family for affording me the opportunity to say a word or two on the occasion of the commemoration of the late Pravin Gordhan's passing about a year ago. Pravin Gordhan dedicated his entire life to the service of the people of South Africa, both in fighting against apartheid so that this country could be free, and during the first 30 years of our democracy, when he worked hard to ensure that the freedom that was attained translated into much better lives for ordinary people than the lives to which they had been subjected under apartheid. Pravin Gordhan had a full appreciation of the enormous harm and damage that corruption is causing to the people and various communities in our country. That is why he was one of the few cabinet ministers who came forward to give evidence in the State Capture Commission in order to help the Commission to find ways to ensure that state capture would be rooted out and South Africa would never again be subjected to another state capture. On the occasion of the commemoration of Pravin Gordhan's passing, I'm also reminded of his contribution while he was Minister of Finance in fighting off attempts by the Guptas and others who worked with them to capture the national treasury. South Africans remain grateful to Mr. Gordhan for his role in the fight against corruption and state capture, and for his role in helping us to join the dots on state capture. Pravin Gordhan served this country and its people selflessly and with humility, and always put the people first. He was a true servant of the people. The best way in which we can honor Pravin Gordhan's legacy would be for all of us to recommit ourselves to a selfless service to the people and our communities, and to always act with integrity, to fight corruption wherever we come across it, and to always put the people first. Mrs. Gordhan, Anisha, Priyesha, and all members of the extended Gordhan family, we as South Africans remain grateful to all of you for allowing Mr. Gordhan to play the roles that he played in this country in the service of the nation. We will always remember him as we continue to intensify our fight against corruption. Thank you very much.
About a year since South Africa lost one of its greatest sons. PG had always been remembered as a liberation fighter, but I choose to remember him as a servant of his people, because even during the liberation struggle, it was about standing up for our people, giving our people dignity. He had this responsibility as a public servant when he had to really establish the South African revenue services. He built it into one of the most formidable tax authorities revered across the world, and he ended up becoming the chairman or president of the World Customs Union. That is the kind of man he was, who understood the importance of building institutions. For us as a country, we must understand that we are really as good as our ability to serve our citizens. We will not be able to serve the citizens unless we are also able to collect revenue to meet their needs and their desires. Pravin had left an indelible mark in the public service. He has left an indelible mark amongst his international colleagues, and will always be sorely missed.
Let me call Minister Feroz Kachalia to deliver a message on behalf of the President of the country.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Maggie. I don't recall ever having said that I need brain surgery, but I'm sure that there are many others who think that I do. Comrades and friends, I have a very simple task today. It is to share with you the President's words and sentiments as we pay tribute to Comrade PG this evening, 1 year after his death. Comrade PG was, without question in my view, one of the most outstanding political leaders of his generation. And I believe that history will record his place as such. Program Director, Mrs. Vanita Raju, Anisha, Priyesha, and the extended Gordhan family, ministers and deputy ministers, representatives of the African National Congress, the Alliance and all parties, honored guests and friends. 1 year on, it is still difficult for many of us to come to terms with Pravin Gordhan's passing. We lost a principled and fearless leader, a leading light of the liberation movement, and a humble servant of our people. Though he is no longer with us, his legacy continues to inspire and to guide. These are difficult days in the life of our nation. We are contending with many challenges, and if we are to deliver on the promise of our democracy, we have to summon every ounce of our collective strength and to push forward to meet these challenges head on and ultimately to prevail. Pravin Gordhan's life was a testament to courage, to resolve, and to resilience. He chose principle over expedience, integrity over compromise, and servant leadership over ambition. After 30 years, despite the difficulties of the moment, our democracy is strong. This is a credit to all who believe in the vision of a united South Africa that looks inward to address and overcome its shortcomings, that learns from its mistakes of the past, and that looks forward. It is a credit to the people of South Africa who mandated us to work together to improve their lives. It is a credit to the legacies of brave, pioneering men and women like PG who fought to liberate our democracy from the grip of state capture. As we work together in earnest to deliver inclusive growth, to create jobs, to tackle the high cost of living, and to build a capable, ethical, developmental state, we count on hard-working men and women who possess the qualities PG exemplified: unwavering commitment to our democracy and constitutional order, devotion to the people, the utmost integrity and moral courage. PG's quiet strength reminded us that integrity is not something you lay claim to on the pages of newspapers or shout from the rooftops. It is lived, it is witnessed, it is emulated. As we journey towards the national dialogue, which will bring all South Africans together to chart a new course for our country, let us honor Pravin Gordhan's memory by picking up the spear he laid down. Drawing inspiration from those who came before, who spared neither strength nor courage to ensure that we would someday be free, let us continue with the hard work of building a better South Africa. Pravin, we remember you with fondness and we miss you. May your soul continue to rest in eternal peace. I thank you.
Vani, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to pay tribute to PG, this being almost 1 year since he passed on. We lost a talented, absolutely resourceful activist and cadre of the movement who played a critical role in knitting things together in the 70s, especially late when some of us joined and got attracted to by some of the approaches and the ways he used to work with the activists and with people that attracted us to deepen our relationship with the people through our activism around many issues: housing, electricity, transport, and all of those things. He was a profound thinker. He had an ability to put things together, summarize them, and communicate them simply. We learned the responsibility for interacting with most people so that we are sufficiently politically networked, but in the constant interface, not only with the elite in society, professionals and so on, but also with basic people who had problems in their neighborhoods and wherever they live. He was an unracial person, absolutely dedicated to building an unracial, non-sexist society that is democratic, and he did it in practice. If you looked at the work that informed the UDF in general, the United Democratic Front, this was the work that we all played an important role in, and he was in the leadership of many of those activities that we undertook. We hope his dreams in this regard never die. Like all of us, there are differences that we would have had with him and others had with him, but the most important memory that we have is that he made, like many others from elsewhere in the country, the UDF become the lifeblood that catapulted the revolutionary movement in our country to its success in 1994. He played a similarly important, profound role in the constitution process, being a very well-respected, good listener, and being able to communicate things that pull together people from different perspectives. Those abilities were taken advantage of, and this is why he played such a central role in the development of the Constitution itself and its implementation. it was a privilege to work with him in many of these initiatives, including as chairperson of the White Paper on Local Government, in which we shaped our dreams of the kind of local government we would like to see in our society. As we speak, some of these initiatives continue significantly for a relook and a review to ensure we learn from our past experience, which would have included some of his contributions, and it would be a great time for that work to continue to happen. We thank you and the family for having borrowed us his time. We know how, in a sense, from afar, being always absent was a critical one in many families of many revolutionaries. But your support has been very profound. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Comrades, colleagues, and fellow servants, today we do more than mark the passing of a man. We honor a patriot, a principled leader, and one of the most courageous public servants of this country has ever known, Pravin Gordhan. From the days of struggle under apartheid to the corridors of democratic governance, Pravin walked a path few could. And in many ways, all of us here today walked that path with him, alongside him. And we know, out of our many years of being with him, that he was a man of substance, of integrity, of quiet, determined service. And it is what we loved about him. And we love most his humility and the manner in which he treated each and every one of us. About politics, he understood that it is not performance art. It is a duty to serve the people with honesty, to speak truth to power, even when it costs you, and most of all, to speak in order to protect and defend our democracy from the threats that would undermine it, such threats mainly coming from within. When institutions were being hollowed out, when corruption was being normalized, and when others remained silent, Pravin stood firm. He knew that governance without ethics is merely management of decline. He chose the harder path, the path of resistance, accountability, and truth. He built and defended institutions, especially the South African Revenue Service, not because it was easy, but because he knew that the health of our democracy depends on trust in its institutions. He fought not for party lines and was not a party man carrying a party line. He did not seek political favor. He pursued and stood for and upheld the values set out in our Constitution and the rule of law. Comrades, it's easy to salute Pravin today, now that his sacrifices are history. But the true tribute we must offer is not words. It is action. It is in asking ourselves, are we prepared to show the same courage? Will we speak out when silence is convenient? Will we govern with integrity even when no one is watching? Pravin reminded us that politics is not about positions. It's about principles. His life is a call to all of us to be better stewards of the power we hold, better servants of the people we represent. To his family, Vanita, and his daughters, Priyasha and Anisha, we thank you. You shared him with our nation, and we honor your sacrifices too. As we remember Pravin, let us raise our standards of service. Let the example of Pravin not be a monument, but spur a movement towards cleaner politics, stronger institutions, and a more just South Africa. Rest in peace, Comrade Pravin.
I wish to thank Mrs. Vanita Gordhan and the family for organizing a memorial to remember Comrade Pravin 1 year after his passing away. It is unbelievable that it is already 1 year since Comrade PG left us a few days after being informed by the family that he was seriously ill. It still feels like just yesterday when we sent him off to his final rest at the Durban ICC. In his passing away, we lost a friend, a comrade, and to me, an elder brother and a mentor. I lost a long-standing comrade of over 45 years since we first met in 1978 at the King Edward VIII Hospital in Durban, where he was a pharmacist while I was a medical student, a student leader, and an activist against apartheid, and an activist for freedom and democracy. After some years of disruption by the state of emergency and detentions, we reconnected after the unbanning of political organizations in 1990, only for him to be detained under the Operation Vula. In the last 19 years before his passing, we had an opportunity to reconnect when he was SARS Commissioner and our CEO of the Sports Commission, and later DG for Sports, responsible for the organizing of the 2010 FIFA World Cup. I was able to tap into his experience of transforming SARS into an efficient organization. We came to work even more closely from 2009, when we were both part of the national executives, both in government and also the national executive of the ANC. I will always remember his courage when our then president of both the ANC and the government, Jacob Zuma, was selling the country to the Guptas. We rallied around Pravin when he was falsely accused by Zuma of working with enemies of our country. I wish to thank his wife, Vanita, and the children for standing by him when the situation was difficult. As we remember him, let us recommit ourselves to making sure that his organization, the ANC, and the progressive movement will regain their stature amongst our people. Make sure that the journey towards a national democratic society is realized. I thank you.
I know it must still be quite painful to the family, and I think of you and what you have gone through 1 year ago. What an extraordinary loss it was when we heard that a great person had died. This was Pravin, the fine intellect, the extraordinary thinker, but it was also the Pravin who put his considerable talents and that fine intellect in the service of the South African people and in the service of social justice, rooting all of his work in an ethical framework that says we do what we do to advance the society, not to advance our own interests. A year gives perspective. It gives an opportunity to think through the legacy of someone. And those words that were shared at the official funeral and at the various memorial services, they ring loud and they ring true about his life, about his contribution to the democracy and to building South Africa. How do we take that legacy forward? One way of doing so is to encourage young people to go into public service, not to retreat from the state, but to go in with an ethical framework, to go in with a commitment to working hard, and to go into public service with a commitment to the use of public power to make the life of marginalized communities better, to improve the conditions of life of workers, of the rural poor, of the unemployed. A second way of paying tribute to Pravin is for us to consider a annual memorial lecture, a memorial lecture that would be an opportunity to reflect on his life and times, but also to take those values and reflect as society evolves, as new challenges come up, using an ethical framework and a commitment to a fairer society and to social justice, how young people, how citizens, how all of us should be responding. And it could be a fitting tribute and a constant opportunity for reigniting that spirit of public service. But I hope too that today you will have an opportunity to laugh a little bit, to share in anecdotes, and to recognize that Pravin had quite a sense of humor, and I'm sure that you'll recall many of those things. That we're celebrating that. Yes, it's been a painful loss, but we're also celebrating what he brought to the country and to our lives. Next year, I hope I can join you in what I hope would be the inaugural Pravin Gordhan Memorial Lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vani and family, for this invitation to speak about PG. There's obviously a lot that one can talk about. PG led one of the strongest clandestine formations in our struggle. Uniquely, it combined overt and covert units, which withstood all the risks that it faced from the South African security forces. It was an incredible capability. This structure called Providence rose to every challenge. That's why this capability was the first to be transferred into Operation Vula. We transcend from that time to when we were at SARS. One of the most fundamental interventions he made resulted in the creation of a safe environment at SARS. PG was the first to acknowledge that we knew little about tax and customs and that we must make every effort to learn. He valued the knowledge that already existed in SARS amongst the previously advantaged. PG quickly recognized that the unintended consequences of the VSP was that it encouraged mainly the talented and the confident to leave state institutions. He assured white employees that there was a place for them in SARS and encouraged them to share their knowledge with us. We, the disadvantaged, had to acknowledge that apartheid didn't prepare us to run sophisticated institutions and that we needed to learn from those that knew, not blindly, but in service of a non-racial South Africa that the Freedom Charter advocated. What many people don't know, by about 2014, 2015, long after PG had left SARS, the commissioner before SARS was still a SARS employee as a specialist in his field. PG's citizen and client centricity ensured that we have dedicated client service. PG walked the floors in the institution and urged us to do the same. We knew that staff had to resolve problems and waiting times had to be minimized. In similar vein, PG put in place a complaints management system very early on that was managed directly in his office. Though rudimentary in the beginning, it signaled his intention that we would be fair and that we would treat people with dignity. For me, the most compelling lesson was that when we think about governance, we usually think about holding others to account, which in most instances is usually after the fact. Equally important, he said, was our willingness to account. And that willingness is a useful predicator of future behavior long before it was needed and long before it was asked for. When state institutions were captured and repurposed for the personal interests of friends and families of then key ANC leaders, PG stood his ground, and for that he was driven out. Then outside government, he once again became a person involved in the direct fight to mobilize and organize opposition to state capturers. Eventually, the state capturers were weakened enough to allow PG back into cabinet as a minister. And PG led an exemplary life of sacrifice and determination and focus. He was an optimist. He always saw a setback as temporary and that it would be overcome. I thank PG. We all owe a lot to him. Thank you.
Friends and family, today we gather not only to honor a national hero, but also to remember a colleague, a mentor, and for many of us, a friend, the late Pravin Jamnadas Gordhan. Let me begin by paying my respects to his wife, Vanita, his daughters, Anisha and Priyasha, and Motabai, his brother, Motabai Manaklal. I had the privilege of working with Minister Gordhan for many years, and I can say without hesitation that he was one of the most dedicated and principled leaders I have ever known. To work with him was to experience firsthand his sharp intellect, his unrelenting work ethic, and his quiet but powerful sense of purpose. He held himself and those around him to the highest safeguards, not for the sake of pride, but because he genuinely believed that South Africa deserved nothing less. What always struck me was his consistency, whether in moments of calm or in times of crisis. Pravin Bai's values never wavered. In countless meetings, when others might have been swayed by politics or personal interest, he always came back to one question: what is in the best interest of the country? That simple compass guided his decisions, and it inspired those of us working alongside him to raise our own standards. Beyond his formidable leadership, he was also generous with his wisdom. He didn't just instruct, he taught by example. I remember the long evenings, either at the Treasury or at his home, when fatigue would set in, but Pravin would still be poring over reports, patiently explaining the implications of a policy or reminding us of the bigger picture. For him, mentorship was not a duty, but a natural extension of his character. Despite the immense pressures he faced, he never lost his humanity. He had a dry wit that would break the tension in the room and always remembered the personal details, asking after your family, encouraging you when you doubted yourself. It was in those small gestures that you saw the heart of the man. Working alongside Pravin Gordhan was more than a professional experience. It was a lesson in courage, integrity, and humility. His fight against corruption was not abstract, it was lived daily in the choices he made and the example that he set. Today, as we honor his memory, we remember not only the finance minister, the anti-apartheid activist, and the reformer of SARS, but also the colleague who made us better, the mentor who guided us, and the friend whose legacy will live in our hearts and in the institutions he helped to safeguard.
Tribute to my dear friend Pravin Gordhan, I should say my comrade friend Pravin Gordhan. It's amazing that it's now a year that has passed since Pravin's passing, but I have to confess that when I've thought about it, as I have often, it just seems to me what an extraordinary loss his death is to the country. So often over the past year, I've thought, where is that voice, that ethical voice, which has proclaimed a non-racial, non-sexist democracy, one which was so committed to the dignity, equality, and freedom, to quote the Constitution of over 60 million South Africans, one that did not seek to have personal benefit, but rather sought to ensure that the benefits of democracy would flow to the entire population. It's a voice, I'm sure I'm not the only one who is attending this important event, shares at this particular moment. But for me personally, I miss Pravin terribly because he kept me on the moral straight and narrow, as it were. Whenever I was disillusioned, whenever I felt that there was some problem which seemed to be unsolvable, there was always the voice of both ethics and optimism which came from him, and which I, together with, I'm sure, many, many people, actually miss so terribly. I'm sorry to be emphasizing the missing part, but what does one do when someone of such extraordinary ethical, moral, and political stature parts the scene, other than to say, who is there to replace that void? Perhaps what Pravin would wanted us to do is for all of us to replace that void, for all of us to speak up courageously, to cross the dots, as he said, to make the connections, and to ensure that the vision of the Constitution, even if it's imperfect, is vindicated for the vast majority of South Africans. I have to say, I miss those calls when he would tell me just how incorrect my particular position was, or alternatively to question the assumptions upon which I've made an analysis. But it was not just that. It was the comradeship, it was the friendship, it was that sense that whenever I spoke to him, I understood why all those years ago I, just as one small individual making a small contribution, as I admit I do, just a minuscule one, nonetheless, was prepared to fight for a non-racial, non-sexist democracy within the UDF, the trade union movement, and later the early ANC. It was precisely because it seemed to me that people like Pravin just personified all that was good about South Africa, all that could be good about a future South Africa. So to Vani, to the family, again, as I said when I spoke at the ceremony on his passing, my heart goes out to all of you, for you obviously are the ones who have, as it were, borne the cost more than the rest of us. But rest assured, Pravin is in our hearts, he's in our minds, and he should be, because his life presents a clear lesson to all of us as to what it means to be an activist and what it means to be committed to the entire South African population, no matter their race, their religion, their gender, or whatever. We should remain loyal to that particular legacy. I fear it is under threat, which is why this particular event, reminding of us what we should do and what Pravin would remind us to do if he was here, is so important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Maggie. I must say you're steering this difficult ship very well. To the family, Comrade Vani and the girls, to the leadership present here, in particular the General Secretary of the ANC, the veterans. I can see there are lots of veterans around, Reverend Chikane and many others who are here. Let me first salute everybody who is here. I must also thank the family for asking me to share a few points about PG. A few years ago, I spoke at a memorial event for another of our stalwarts, Comrade Ahmed Kathrada. It is well known now that some of my comments were weaponized and used to stir controversy. This is probably the inherent danger of taking up national duty with an activist mindset. And of course, I should add that being associated with Shan doesn't do you any favor too. But considering the hullabaloo, one could become circumspect about what to say on such an occasion, and therefore remain broadly on the safe zone. But this is an event to honor the life and memory of Comrade Pravin. It requires all of us to bear testimony to his legacy, that of standing up to defend the interests of the people of South Africa, being truthful, confronting corruption and racism head-on, and not being cowed when attacked by bullies. I must also add that he had a unique way of being committed to the ANC to the core, which was PG. But at the same time, he would not shy away to criticize the ANC when it's veering in the wrong direction. That was PG. PG was, in fact, disdainful of the safe zone, and anyone who opted to remain neutral when we are in battle, he rightfully called such people what they are, cowards. In any event, I doubt Vani would have asked me to speak here unless I stayed true to PG's beliefs and my relationship with PG, which was based on authenticity, commitment to principles, and a determination to change the lot of our people. I must start off by saying that PG and I did not always agree on everything. Actually, we disagree on a few big issues, and sometimes we would get into a vigorous debate about the state and about our movement. Sometimes I'll walk home inside swearing at him, saying, Pravin is so stubborn. One of the things we disagreed about was whether being part of the state was the only way to serve the people of South Africa. I believe this was not the case, for many reasons which I would not bore you with. But fundamentally, one of the reasons that I said that was that social mobilization of South Africans and citizens for accountability and public accountability is central to the sustenance of democracy. Of course, PG had a different view. And in his belief, whose beliefs I respected. But PG had an appreciation of statecraft that is almost unmatched in the current generation of political leaders. He was a firm believer in a strong state, a capable state, a strategic state that actually drives development and drives change in society. As we witnessed the hollowing of the state and the increased involvement of private interest in political decision-making, I must say that I have a greater appreciation for PG's side of the argument. Once you open the door to unelected people taking control of key decision-making, it is difficult to wrestle it back. On reflection of the Gupta's partial takeover of the state, it is obvious that everyone recognized the abnormality of the situation and their actions, even those who participated in the process and protected their project. But today, there are some political parties, commentators, and sections of the media, even those who joined the fight against state capture a few years ago, who welcome usurping of state functions by private interest. To be clear, the support from business can help capacitate the state, but there is a line that is crossed when private interests take hold of policy and state appointments and influence the awarding of state contracts. And while the Guptas had no ideology beyond the grabby self-interest, today's would-be state capturers are connected to right-wing campaign to undermine our sovereignty as a country. On the other hand, there is another dimension to this. Organized crime has become embedded in our politics and in our institutions, weakening the state even further. Our security establishment remains at war with itself, and nobody seems to know how to remedy the situation. Comrade Feroz, don't take it personal. I sometimes wonder whether the pain PG and his comrades went through as they stood against state capture was worth it. Have the country, have the ANC internalized and understood the nature of state capture, its underlying causes, and how to insulate the country from this constant threat? Perhaps I would feel differently if South African society was better able to recognize the red flags and oppose these tendencies irrespective of race, class, or creed of the perpetrators. Reflecting on PG and his life, I question why the state appears so vulnerable without defenses. The hard truth is that those who have the authority to lead are not leading. Far from correcting course, the behavior of our political elites have gotten worse. Today's weaknesses and lethargy in our politics are in sharp contrast to the bold and firm leadership of Comrade Pravin. Unless progressives act to fill the vacuum as PG did, it will inevitably be filled by populists, it will be filled by opportunists, it will be filled by reactionaries. Since PG's passing, there has been unprecedented changes in the world. Geopolitical power games and trade wars are the sign of the times, redefining alliances and political economic relationships. A few years ago, issues like promotion of human rights, multilateralism, and global peace, countering climate change, support for healthcare, particularly the fight against HIV/AIDS, and condemnation of racism were universally accepted. I shudder to say today that is frighteningly not the case. The atrocities of war have numbed our collective consciousness, and no longer provoke outrage. Nationalist sentiments is on the rise, and support for the developing world has been replaced by great investment in military capacity. Cooperation and coexistence have been replaced by fight for survival. In South Africa, society is more fractured than any other period in our democracy. There is increasing despondency and voter apathy arising from state failure and incapacity, wasteful expenditure, and corruption scandals. This is likely to have major consequences in the next year local elections. As with the last year's national and provincial election, the balance of power is likely to shift even further. The government of national unity remains very fragile, although more settled, and the national dialogue has so far been unable to unite South Africans in a quest for a new vision. Systemic problems still beset our economy and inhibit growth, and that's the challenge we're all facing. PG had a tendency to call me at random, out of the blue, and he will ask, MJ, what's your reading? My response now would be that the democratic project is under threat. The politics of fear have eclipsed the politics of consensus and hope that defined our movement. The number of people opting to vote, not to vote, outnumber those who do vote. Populists have more space, and populists both left and right have more space and opportunities to undermine the constitutional foundations of our country. People pin their hopes on authoritarian symbols, and heightening battles in security agencies could even lead to further political crisis. The pinning of hope to authoritarian rule, if you look at social media, the big picture of Traore seems to loom large. That tells you what people think. South Africa is also in the grip of a dangerous information war that many people are either unaware or understanding. Others have become acquiescent participants. The divisions in our society are palpable, with most worrying feature being the brazen rise of racism and apartheid nostalgia on social media. There is an offensive trend that anyone who is black and associated with the liberation movement is cast as inept, corrupt, or both. What started out as a political difference over equality and transformation laws has mutated into a regime change agenda that is so powerful if it is not met with some resistance. People are so scandal fatigued and frustrated by domestic conditions that they do not see the inherent danger of inviting foreign interference in domestic affairs and punitive actions against our country. I have just returned from a trip to India, where I was amazed by the level at which media society has rallied around the leadership of the country to fight against the impact of tariffs on the country. And it's something that is so wonderful to watch, the level of patriotism that you find. In South Africa, we've seen the opposite. South Africans, including political representatives, have sponsored anti-South African sentiment in foreign capitals, on social media, taking perverted pleasure from false accusation against our country and its democratic government. They openly align with other countries' agendas and interests while condemning their country's agenda. These campaigns have aggravated the historic divides of our country, infusing fear, misinformation, and conspiracy theories into the national discourse. Of course, I wish I had the patience and energy PG had to confront and call people out when they did such things. PG was always ready to fight, particularly to correct what was wrong, whether it was public or it was in the secrecy of government structures. We must also admit that this came at a cost, with all manners of accusation against him and even against his family. PG's contribution to this country were never adequately appreciated and were instead distorted to impair his legacy. I struggled to make peace with how this played out. I came across something in Salem, witch trials, that had some resonance. The essay noted that events in the colonial Massachusetts in the 17th century had nothing to do with witches, but about instilling fear and controlling public mind. More than 200 people were accused of witchcraft, resulting in executions of 19 by hanging and the killing of 1. The trials relied heavily on supernatural evidence and testimony about visions or dreams of the accused causing harm. You find the same pattern in our politics of the moment. Fear-mongering, disinformation, scapegoating, and conspiracy theories are used to heighten divisions and distrust amongst our people. A pervasive information war seeks to redefine our national identity. The advent of social media and AI was good, but it has removed the safeguards and weakened the line between what is real and what is deep fake. The past year flew very quickly, but it was also a very torturous year without PG. I feel PG's absence profoundly, and many people do. I constantly muse about our strategies to wriggle out of tight spaces or tackle explosive political conditions. And PG was, somebody said, he had also humor in the most difficult environments. A few weeks before his passing, we had a rather heated conversation with PG about the particular challenges confronting South Africa and how we're responding to these challenges. And I want to stress that, Comrade Max, PG was ANC to the core. And he maintained the line, but at the same time he was able to go beyond and actually look at the issues without looking at party line, as it were. But at the end, I think because we're showing discomfort and we're giving up, PG really scolded us and said that there is no time to give up and we need to help out with some of the intractable problems we're debating. He had, of course, the last word, as I said, you are not allowed to give up. And probably that's the message that I will give you today. We can't give up. We must continue the fight for those things that PG stood for. To Vani and the family, I know the pain is unrelenting. As a group of his comrades and loved ones, we can only take heart from the memories and lessons of PG's life of struggle and service. I wish I had answers how we keep alive his passion and commitment to strong and performance-driven state, clean governance, and engaged nation. I do not, and probably most of us don't. But this remains the unfinished conversation that as the country we need to have. But let us not give up hope and adopt a defeatist attitude. PG was right that we cannot give up. We need to put heads together to find ways to build and defend our country and defend our movement. I thank you.
Thank you very, very much,